Me please. Yeah, Councillor Booth, thank you. And Councillor Scott. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. We move now to actions register update, and as we've done this morning, we'll just whip through these items. So budget reallocation trial, we had some discussion around that this morning, and the Chief Executive is over that one. Work ongoing, the trial opening Arangi Stadium Park. I know there's conversations behind the scenes tied to the future of the stadium development. Is there any discussion on that? So we've got the event funding workshop, date to be confirmed. Ombudsman report, there's some stuff in today's meeting on that. There's a few other things which I know will take some time. So there's ongoing work on investigation of payment for Freedom Campers, and they are only in the December meeting, so I'm conscious of that. We talked about traffic management investigation and other alternate to save or look at some potentials on alternate delivery. There's ongoing work on that, which we discussed this morning also. Subcontracting across council, ongoing. Has that been picked up specifically? I know a lot of this, Mr Dixon, lands with you. Has that been started as such yet, or work in progress? So that was the investigate subcontracting across council. Underway. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. And we'll just track that through this action registrar. Move now to small trades that'll be ongoing. I'm comfortable with that. That will take some time to do the work. We talked also about the OIA. Councillor Piddington raised that this morning in regard to Wakatahi, which we know will be action. We'll follow that up. And then the waste loss investigation. I know we did discuss this morning, and we might just touch on that when we go through the budget item as far as where we want to get to with that. Agenda prep. I think this is a key one for both chairs, and I think we'll leave it to chairs and SLT just to drive this as far as agenda prep, so I think we all need to take some ownership for that. Quarterly activity reports, note there's some information, parks information to be available. I think that's really good. So for those that aren't aware, that's quarterly activity reports to include a forward work program. It's very much around transparency with the community, so we don't surprise you to say that we're working out a tree in front of your property, that it's transparent in the council and public arena, so you know and get the opportunity in a timely fashion to feedback on that. Quarterly underutilisation of assets that will be ongoing.
Sorry, Nigel.
Yes, Councillor Piddington.
Can we get a date around that?
That one?
We said it in December, it was going to be tabled at the next meeting. So otherwise they just slide. And I mean, there must be a list of assets we're not using, can't be that hard. Yeah, so I think, Nicole, that is going to sit with you. Yep, so just for those that wouldn't have been able to pick that up, so Ministry of Infrastructure, property manager working together, and that'll come to our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Piddington. And then the template for financial impact, which is a good one, Councillor Piddington, from last time, and that will come through as and where is necessary, such as the likes of the theatre, stadium, or anything really, whether it's subdivision, whatever. So that's really good. Any further questions, discussion around those action? Lot in there, but so with this, I know we talked about it last time. There's going to be some reminders sent out from the staff, so you can feed into that. So there's any requests that get formally made through this process. So that'll kick in this new year's for the next meeting. So you've got timely manner. So if you're wanting to feed anything into that, can you probably just in the first instance feed that into Alicia? Yeah, cool. Okay, so I'm happy to move the actions register. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Shannon. Thank you. Put the motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Cool. Okay, 9.3, release of public excluded reports. Just sort of business as usual. I don't really think we need anyone to speak to this, but the recommendation is that the council notes the following public excluded reports have been released to the public. So that's the purchase of property. I think that's had a media story, and also the appointment of Civil Defence Emergency Management Controllers and Recovery Manager. Any discussion on that? Just sort of business as usual now, which is fantastic. I'm happy to move that from the chair. Councillor Jackson, happy to second that. Perfect. We'll put the motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. So we move now to the first more substantial item on the agenda, which is 9.4, and that's the Arangi Park Sports Stadium's options. And I'll welcome Mr. Dixon, Group Manager of Infrastructure, to come and talk to this. And I'm just conscious, team, of the size of the agenda. So I think we're pretty much all on the same page as where this will head. So we probably don't need to spend oodles of time on it, but I'll pass to you just for a brief introduction, Mr. Dixon, and then we can move forward. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So this report is about really presenting another option that has been identified as part of an investigation looking at reducing out the cost of this project, and that has been the main driver here. So the option that is here is an extension of the existing stadium out over the netball courts towards the north. That allows us to basically keep the existing stadium, and the extension strengthens it as well. So we won't be an earthquake-prone building should this extension go ahead. There is advantages in that. You've got the existing stadium has a lot of multi-purpose functionality attached to it. It's not just a sports stadium. It's got a floor that can be used for other purposes. It's got commercial kitchens, etc. So there is some advantages in that. And I guess you avoid the costs of actually having to demo it and then reinstate that into court area. Whereas the new 10-court stadium, yes, it's a nice stadium. It will generally be used for just sports, and you do have that cost of potentially cost of demolition and reinstating it, because you are going to be taking all of your netball courts, which are used for tennis courts as well during the summer. So you'd lose that at the same time if you didn't do the demolition. So yeah, it is about cost. We presented it as another option here. We have talked to the user reference group about the two options. There's general support among that group. And yeah, so I'll pass it over to discussion.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mr. Dixon. I'll take a couple of comments, questions, and then we'll move it forward. Councillor Puddington.
Yeah, I was at the user group. The sports are still excited. They just want us to get on and do something. So, look, I've got no problem at all with what's going on there. I do have a question, though, if we pass this and we move to the design and build option, how soon that would come, because every timeline we've had to move. So I'm hoping that can follow up relatively quickly, and if we could have an update of that timeline for the users, that would be great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Just through you, Mr. Chair, Nicole will be pulling that together, and as soon as this has been ratified, we'll be straight onto it, and then we'll get the timeline sorted from there.
Perfect, thank you. And Councillor Puddington, would you like to move that? Thank you. Any further questions, discussion? Councillor Shannon, sorry.
Yeah, just a quick question with regards to the space that the existing stadium is sitting on. If we went with the option of the full new build on the courts, that releases that space for future growth in car parks or hockey turfs or the likes, doesn't it? But we don't have any more space for future growth of any codes, do we, if we do go with this option?
Yeah, you probably don't have a lot of space without taking further car parking away. You're certainly lacking in flat area. But I suppose there is still that western side of the park which could be utilised. You know, you could lose the cricket oval, for instance, if you needed to do future expansion. Yeah. So it's a big park, yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'll go Councillor Puckett and then we'll go Councillor Scott. Thanks, Councillor Puckett.
Thank you. Andrew, with keeping the old build and strengthening it, would it be suitable for civil defence in the future? Will the new build and the strengthened old build be suitable for civil defence centre in the future?
Yeah, in both options, it could be suitable for civil defence, yes, it would be. As a welfare centre, not as a response centre, so it would meet IL3, not IL4, but it could still be used for that welfare side of things.
Yeah, which is what the requirement is that we would need. Yep, so that fits. Councillor Scott to finish, and would you like to second that, Councillor Scott, as
Yes,
well?
I will, after I've
Perfect,
gone through a
thank you.
couple of questions, please. There was a couple of surprises in there, so I just want to clarify a couple of those. Page 59.13, it states that if we were to do the extension, that obviously the existing outdoor courts would not be available, but in this report it also says that the netball pavilion will not be available for use during this time, and that is a surprise to me, and I want to, have we consulted with netball on that? Because that is significant, and their own building. So I question whether we can evict someone from their own building. First question.
In regard to the netball pavilion, if you went for the 10-court stadium, the build comes very close to it, so it potentially would be in the construction zone, and that's why it wouldn't be available. If you did the 6-court extension, then there is quite a bit of gap there. I don't see that impacting on the netball pavilion.
I was a little, being part of the reference group for the last 3 years, I was a little bit upset to see on page 60.23 that there feels like there'd been no cost savings to a new build, where I feel that our reference group over the last 12 months have worked very hard at getting the cost down from 28 million to 23 by visiting pretty much every sports facility in the South Island and looking at ways to save money. So, you know, I would like just to acknowledge that group of people that have worked really hard to get, you know, try and get the best thing for our community at the, not the cheapest cost, but, you know, the best cost for our community. So, yeah, I just want to acknowledge their hard work with that. They have worked hard to reduce that cost, so that needs to be acknowledged. I also want to note one of the big things in our long-term plan was that there is a community fundraise element to this. It has been set at 10% of the build, so I'd like to acknowledge that that 10% will still be granted. So if we're a miracle and we get it down to 17 million, that it will still be 10%, because I won't be going out for 2.8 million if it's 15%. So I want to know that we all still agree that it's a 10% community fundraise.
10% is 10%.
Thank you very much.
In my view, can't make it any more or less.
And just the final one is point 28. We've acknowledged that due to the carrying out the investigation work, that some earthquake strengthening to the existing building is required. Have we communicated to the current users that that work needs to be carried out immediately, and will there be any impact to our community on closure of that during this time?
Probably hasn't been communicated at this point. We're still getting the design done, and then we'll understand better what is required in the actual construction. But indications are, and our structural engineers have assured us, that the work can actually be done without much disruption to the actual users of the stadium.
Note, you know, just coming into that transition from summer to winter sport, winter is extensive in there. So just, yeah, really good communications to our community would be awesome. Just so they can plan as well, because, you know, we're netball's starting, basketball, you know, all kids, secondary school sport, everything's back up and running. So, you know, if we need to shut down, we can only utilise 2 courts for whatever, we really need to communicate that. But other than that, I would love to second this. I look very much forward to giving this to stadium professionals once we've gone through the tender and procurement space and really seeing what the professionals can do with this. And I know the community is super excited, so thank you for all your work to date.
Perfect. Thanks, Councillor Scott. And look, you raise a really good point that I just want to echo as the community group, and I'd just like to acknowledge Councillor Scott and Councillor Piddington's involvement with this, but they haven't been asking for the Rolls-Royce model. It's about a community facility that, you know, delivers sports for, you know, for everyone. It's not about, you know, hosting the Silver Ferns. It's about, you know, local sport done well, if you like. I borrowed that from Local Water done well. Did you see that? Anyway, timing, nice timing that it's got the first reading today in Parliament. Anyway, I was digressing, but I've got a mover and a seconder. Any further discussion? No, brilliant. I'll put the motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, Mr Dixon. Really appreciate it. So that was 9.4, move to 9.5 and 9.6, and welcome Mr Abbott to come for these items. And this partly is on the back of the Ombudsman report and what our next steps are. So I'll pass to you, Mr Abbott, for 9.5.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillors. The public excluded meetings and workshops policy is as a result of the Ombudsman's investigation into council meeting and workshop practices. At the Audit and Risk Committee meeting in November of last year, it was resolved to present to this council the policy as reviewed by them, with subject to 2 amendments. And those amendments were the inclusion of a joint delegation to the Chief Executive and the Mayor to release previously excluded documents, and to make it very clear that the accountability for record keeping of meetings actually rested with council as a whole and not with officers. So before you is the recommendation to receive and adopt the public excluded meetings report, workshops policy, the report that went to ARC last year, and the policy itself. This policy, in terms of consultation, has been viewed by the Office of the Ombudsman, and some minor adjustments and tweaks have been brought into that already. So there's been clear visibility around that from that part. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Ms Abbott. Questions? Anything? No, really good report. Really comfortable with that. Obviously, we've had some viewing of this, and it's just putting to bed a few other things that we needed to do, bearing in mind that I think by the time the report would come out, the majority of the sort of recommendations were in place. So I appreciate all those that have worked on that. So I'm happy to move that from the chair. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Burt, thank you. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. So 9.6 now, and update on the report by the Ombudsman. Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Again, the Ombudsman, as part of that review, has asked for periodic reports in terms of actions and activities in support of his report. That update is provided for you, and I'll take that as read if I could. The timing sequences are the report that went to that office in August of last year, and progress that's occurred since that time. Just a point to note, I've listed in there under discussion point 9 the other councils that were subject to this report, and noted that none of the larger metropolitan centres were actually viewed at the time. Also to note, and this may have been covered previously, that the Ombudsman has jurisdiction over the Lagoima, but workshops that are not considered part of Lagoima, he can only make his expectations voiced, and those are covered by here. We've considered those to be matters of best practice or good and developing practice in council, and have adopted those largely in terms of the way we're conducting our business now. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Any questions, any points of clarification? Yeah, Councillor Scott, thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for this report. I just wondered, do we have requirements about when these actions need to be like closed out? Because we've got comments from August and then we've got comments from January, and a lot have not progressed. And so I just wondered, is there a time frame for completing the actions?
Through you, Your Worship, I believe that the actions have progressed and progressed quite well. Where there's no significant movement from August to now indicates, by and large, that that action was completed in August. So, with the exception of some changes to our Info Council templates, the availability of the Info Council people to actually make those changes. So you have a point in particular?
Just through you, Mr Mayor. I'm just wondering whether we add to this report the next time it comes, whether we believe it's closed or not.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's our opinion it was closed. If you take on page 81, number 2, you know, continue to strengthen communication between reporters and reviewers, I think that's pretty strong now. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, it's closed.
That would be handy, because I didn't write out every single one. I thought, why have we not progressed that? But I'm happy to feed that back in. You know, the first one worries me the most is, and I'm sure there's an internal document, you know, around identifying barriers for staff to feel safe raising concerns. And we've got comments on there on the 8th of August, we've got comments on the 22nd of January, but we're going out to do another survey. And I just, you know, so, I mean, that's great that we're doing that, but I'd love to see the results of that. And, you know, if it's concerns with people at this table, then we need to address it. And so, you know, it'll be good to see the results of some of that. Yeah.
Through you, Your Worship, it's not a survey that we're taking on the 27th of February. It's an interactive council officer workshop that will explore the relationship between this forum and the council organisation in terms of preparedness, writing and presentation of reports. And this then becomes part of our induction process as well. So not something that I would consider to be dealt with in one session. This is a very iterative process around how we deal with our staff and treat our staff.
Goes back to my question, when do we close it out?
I don't believe that point will actually ever be closed out personally. You know, if we're looking at a continuous improvement mechanism, this is one that we continually strive to better at.
So we continue to report to the Ombudsman.
Sorry, through the Chair, I'm conscious that in terms of the response to the Ombudsman, we can close these matters out.
That is my question.
That's the question. And yes, in response to how we progress the development of this organisation, that will be iterative and ongoing.
Yeah, comfortable with that? Councillor Biddington.
Point 12 on page 84, in August we said we're continuing an investigation to a system to allow members of the public to subscribe to receive notifications. Have we done that? Because my spam box is full every morning of stuff that people that send notifications to me. I'm thinking that can't be that hard.
Through you, Your Worship, we believe that that the communication methods we're using at the moment are certainly effective, but if there are alternatives or options that are being presented in your spam box, Councillor, we'd be happy to receive those and action them.
No, this is your point. You were investigating it.
I believe that the mechanisms we have for making meeting dates and times more visible to the public via our website and social media platforms appear to be effective. So from that point of view, I'm satisfied that that's complete, but if there are other mechanisms that people are seeking in terms of having those dates and times more visible, then we'll certainly consider them. But we'd need to know what they are, what their views are.
So
Sorry, there's a gentleman behind you asked me what dates the council meetings were on, and if they could subscribe to a system rather than having to search that just comes to their inbox, which is the suggestion in number 12, and I'm asking whether we've completed that.
We haven't completed an automatic download of meeting dates to inboxes at this time, no. But we have full visibility of council meetings on our website and on our social media platforms, particularly Facebook.
Yeah, so what you're suggesting is an email that may or may not go into your spam box, but reminds you that, hey, there's a council meeting in X amount of days' time, which should, I'm not IT savvy, but we get it from everywhere else, so I'm sure we can look to do that, yeah.
We'll bring that back to the next meeting.
Perfect. Thank you. Any further questions? Good piece of work, and obviously we had the final report, but prior to that we had a draft report, so this, you know, feels like it's been going on for, and it maybe gone on for almost 2 years. It's a long time. I know there's been a lot of feedback into this stuff, and I think probably now we can safely say that we're very much operating as far as a council of best practice in these. And you can always improve, but we're operating in a pretty high level, I would expect.
Through you, again, Your Worship, just to reinforce that, we've attended a number of online meetings with Tai Tuara and others, and I would say that we are well progressed ahead of quite a large number of other councils who are still struggling with these matters. And the themes that came through from the Ombudsman's report are consistent across the 8 councils that were reviewed at the time.
Brilliant. Thank you. Really important work. I'm happy to move that. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Jackson. Yeah. Further discussion? All good. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Brilliant. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. Move now to 9.7, which is financial zone. Annual plan. Oh, yep. And welcome.
I'm not talking to this one.
The first half is
Andrea. Alrighty, who's leading off? Mark again, Mr. Abbott, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship and councillors. The report before you is the annual plan 6-monthly performance report. And the objective of this report is to provide you with a perspective or overview of a number of key performance indicators that considers both in the non-financial performance area and in the financial performance area. I've noted, or we have noted in this report, a number of highlights by activity group and asset area, which I'll take as read, and a number of those points have been discussed in committee workshops already this morning. In terms of KPI year-to-date results to the end of December, we have approximately 10% of KPIs that are nearly achieved, 3% not achieved. I would suggest that the relevance of these becomes more apparent as we move towards the assessment of the full year activities. The reporting from asset managers and activity managers is that a high level of confidence in achieving the majority of KPIs. Clearly there will be some in terms of waste diversion and contamination control in the waste sector, and water supply will be ongoing, but by and large in terms of activity areas we are tracking fairly comfortably against our KPI indicators. If you have any questions on that, I'm happy to deflect that to the asset groups and activity groups involved, or I'm more than happy to pass over the financials to Andrea.
I just have one question on the KPIs.
Yep,
On page 91, the roading and footpaths, what is the KPI? It just says percentage of customer service requests responded to within 10 days. We've got the result, but it doesn't say what the actual KPI is.
I had the same question. What was the target? 36.31 seems low. But so, yeah, what are we aiming for? Susie, are you aware? So that's welcome.
Yes, so it's 70% responded to within 10 working days. There's always a challenge with the system, so the response time is we'll go out and actually look and program the fault, but there's a bit of a delay between the technical, there's the what we call the RAM system that goes out to the contractor, and then they're talking to the internal CRM system, so the actual response is generally met. However, we don't have the physical evidence that is the case.
Yeah, so the response is being made, oh, you say, yeah, okay, yeah, no. get
And the
you.
response might not be a repair at that moment in
No,
time.
totally,
It could be programmed, but yes.
yeah. Yeah,
Just before you go, I'm just going to clarify that as CEO. So we had 471 land transport related CRMs, and we responded 36% of them within 10 days. But what I'm hearing from you is we probably did more responses, but the system is not picking that up. Is that correct?
That's correct. We do have a system that sorts it. We're still fine tuning it. There is, a API that goes between the two. And it just depends on how the contractor closes off the information in the CR, in the RAM system itself. So it's just a technical issue, but of course, audit look at the technicality, not what we deliver.
So how far off do you think we are, the 70%?
That would be a bit of a guess, but I think generally speaking, when our CRMs come through, we're there within the week to go and have a look at the issue. Yeah.
Councillor Parker.
Good question, just on key highlights and issues. Public toilets, a new toilet block identified at Caroline Bay with installation not likely till next financial year. So where is that toilet block being situated? And with that toilet block and a minor renovation to Station Street next year, that will be the whole of that budget taken up?
And it's also subject to the confirmation of the capital program, etc. as well, so.
So where's the allocation of the toilet block on Caroline Bay?
A question probably for Nicole. Thank you.
Apologies, just repeat the question again.
Whereabouts is the new toilet block at Caroline Bay to be installed?
We haven't determined some of the areas that we investigated. It's too difficult for the plumbing to go in where a lot of the users of the playground anticipated. We are actually exploring an option with the ice cream shop that's part of the Caroline Bay Association. There is actually a block annexed to that small building that has plumbing in it and was old toilets, I believe. So we're investigating that as an option to bring that back out of hibernation, basically, which will save us actually having to put a whole new toilet in. We are getting people talking to us about the issue of children and having to escort children to the other toilets. I appreciate they're there, but it is a low-lying issue that is forming with no proximity of toilets closer than 5 minutes walk or so away. But for a young child, they're finding an issue. We'll explore it. If we can do it and we have the funds, we will come back to this table with all the plans and the information. And if we can't, we'll equally come back and let you know. Yeah. Thank you.
So those toilets are actually currently open anyway, the ones near the, or certainly at
The
peak
ones
season.
by the bird cage, yes. Yeah.
And then the
there's
other
some
ones
more.
near the ice cream kiosk are
Yeah.
open
So we want to look at actually how we keep those open for the duration of the,
for the
which will probably solve the issue, and better signage to that.
signage and what have you, so use
might make it
existing,
easier.
which would make some sense.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll go to Councillor Booth.
My question's for Nicole.
Yeah.
Social housing.
Yes.
It would be quite handy if you actually had perhaps a percentage of where your occupation was and how many were perhaps empty, just to
Yep.
give us a bit of a benchmark
Yep.
on a
So-
regular basis.
Yep, I get monthly reports, so I will actually start to feed that in. And at this current time, we have 219 flats that have now been leased out. We have another 5 that are just coming on stream, and some others that we're repairing that are still under Healthy Homes. So of the 236, we've now made significant inroads to leasing out, and we're doing some enabling works to take our units into what we call a one bed, which is actually more preferable to the market. So we're not actually extending the footprint, we're just changing some of the layout inside. So we're up at 219 now, fully leased.
And out of the...
236.
Okay, that's great. Well, just it might be a percentage.
Absolutely, yeah.
That'd be great, thank you.
No, we can do that.
Perfect, thank you. Look, and congratulations to your team. I know Diane's doing a fantastic job in that space, so it's great to see she's done really good work. Further questions? Any on the financials? You want to kick in? Yep. Who wants to go first? Councillor Fiddington.
Happy on the financials. I guess at the top, we've got an operating deficit of 2.64, which is unfavourable to the budget by 5.5 million. What are we doing to address that? Because if I extrapolate out 2.5, we're going to be 5 million short in operating, which does concern me.
Okay, Councillor Piddington. The results are exactly that. So we do have some timing issues with our revenue. So that is part of parcel, particularly with some of the bigger projects. And we also have, we're working hard with staff to try and pull the costs back. So while we're 818 over in personnel costs, that is a factor of a number of one-off events that we've had to deal with, and they should not continue. The depreciation expenses on budget as it should be. The finance costs, we are facing higher rates as everyone else is, so that's, and plus the borrowing levels. And the other expenses, we're holding those really tight. Now, the initial forecast on this was, you can see the forecast line in the middle there, in the second last to right column, it says $10 million deficit. Now, initially that forecast was 15, and we've done some significant work, particularly on other expenses to pull it back. So we are examining our costs as much as we can. We are also challenging each other on our revenue lines to ensure that we pull that deficit back as much as possible.
Yeah, I think the key concerns obviously in the financing costs, and I mean it flows through to some of the policies sitting within their LTP, but also to have that flexibility on the annual basis so we can adjust for interest rate changes, I think is key. Is it's something we discussed about. Obviously another one topical for elected members is getting on top of the waste deficit. I know we've had some discussions, which is really important. So, yeah, we certainly welcome the progress. I'll go now to Councillor Booth.
Thank you. Of the revenue of 60 million, is there any non-cash items such as, I guess, unrealised gains on bonds or any vested assets or anything like that?
I'm going to get you a T-shirt, vested asset.
The only essential non-cash that's in there is the interest rate swaps around the hedging. So essentially we put through a journal on a monthly basis, then it's recognised in physical cash on a quarterly basis. Vested assets are a one-time a year, June 2024 transaction.
The amount of is 1.1 million, is that right? The unrealised gain that you've done a book entry on is 1.1 million, is that right?
Yep.
Okay. So just looking on page...
So Councillor Booth, just on that, when the vested assets do come in, that forecasted $10 million loss will reduce. So it will come down, albeit they are a non-cash item, but they do come through the revenue lines and they do hit our balance sheet.
There was quite a large amount from Waka Kotahi come through for 9.8 million against budget of 6. Does that mean that is that a matter of timing, or is that actually because we've spent roughly 10 million on roading and we've claimed 9?
Yes, so it means that we've spent the money. So what was it, 9 million? So we've spent around 20 million. So we had a really good start to the construction season, better than we thought we'd have, especially particularly doing the Ewan Road work that we did out in Temuka. So we were able to claim subsidy earlier than we had budgeted at the start of the year.
How much more roading have you got planned before the end of the financial year?
We'll meet the available budget sitting within the approved budget.
What's the quantum of that?
There's not a huge amount of significant works to do, but there is the ongoing maintenance, a couple of small works, so it's probably more like, three-quarters spent, quarter to go.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to work out what your potential subsidy you're going to get back from Wakatahi. So you've had 9, and you're going to spend, say, another 4 or 5. That means you've got 2 to come, potentially.
Following the extra bit of money that we did get confirmed prior to Christmas, it will be a bit higher than that, more like 5.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So on page 99, other revenue and corporate activities, the 999,000, what is that? $99?
That was the Three Waters funding transition support from Internal Affairs, 2.3.
And the 1.95, I assume that's interest from our own finance, from THL, is it? Below it. No, 1.965, finance revenue.
Your finance revenue?
So the finance revenue, $1 million of that is interest that we've received from the bank.
Okay, and we go down, so that's interest we received from the bank, okay, so I just see further down there in operating expenditure, finance costs, we've got, you've got in the budget 885,000 and the actual was 2.35. Surely our budgets and that shouldn't be so far out, and certainly should be updated as you go along to reflect actually what's going on.
So that has been done in the forecast. Because the original annual plan budget was at 3.62%, whereas at the moment we're closer to 4-5%.
So why is this? Why wouldn't you update it here then?
Because the annual plan's
That's
an
the
annual
annual
plan, but we've updated it in the forecast, so the forecast will be what essentially we'll work towards at year end.
Yeah, okay.
Councillor Pye.
Just along those lines of what Councillor Booth's asking, is I fail to understand how when we set this budget, we did not have a better grip on what our interest costs were going to be, because they haven't risen that much in 6 months. And we must know what we've got fixed, at what rates, and what's going to come on floating. And I just feel like we probably need to get better at budgeting our interest, because it was a problem last year, it's a problem. But my actual question is on the whole council, sorry, I've just lost my page. On the whole of council on page 96, before the CE alluded to some personnel costs in this current period, but we're forecasting to be $3 million out on our personnel costs by the end of the year. So what is going on between now and the end of the year? Because I thought you had just said we'd dealt with some issues and...
So in our personnel budget, there is a line known as a vacancy factor. That vacancy factor, when the budgets were set, was a balancing number to get to a number in your annual plan. Now, if your vacancies are not running as high as normal, then you are going to exceed budget. So we have a fixed establishment of staff. They apply this vacancy factor to say that number of people will not be here during the year, so there's your budget. Now, I'm not a fan of vacancy factors, because when you get a situation like this where you do employ the staff, you blow your budget. That is what it is.
Really leads to another point, which is when we're looking at these budgets in future, I think it's really important for this table to know what the assumptions are.
Yep.
So what is the underlying interest rate? What is the vacancy factor? What are all of those assumptions? Because I think that's what we've missed in the past.
Yeah. Now, that needs to be described well through the annual plan, and when we come to the long-term plan, again, those assumptions need to be well described to you. when you look at this set of financials in the forecast, as I said, the other expenses, the original forecast was we were going to spend 65 million. So we've pulled that back just by looking at what we're spending the money on and also what our staff are currently doing. So there's a bit of a trade-off there, but the net trade-off has been positive. Now, when you do look at the actuals, and if you look at that revenue, 3.6 under, 3.6 of that is one transaction, and that is the subsidy for the Theatre Royal. We've got budgeted 3.6 in the first 6 months. We have drawn 0. Okay, so that if that 3.6 had been drawn, we'd be on budget overall. The next line, if the interest rates, as you said, were at the right rates, there would only be 400 over, and that is predominantly staffing. So we're within Kui. There's some timing issues here, and there are some issues that will be permanent. And we are pushing through, the entire SLT is pushing hard to keep these costs down as much as possible. We've gone out to our own staff to look at savings initiatives, and they're coming up with ideas. And those ideas are not hundreds, they're actually thousands, tens of thousands of dollars of ideas to save money. So the team is doing a great job on that. And we've got to keep that going. But the trick is turn it from ideas to implement. Yeah.
And I appreciate the good work the team have been doing, but we're still forecasting a $5 million overspend on our expenses for the year. And I think the problem has actually been not understanding the assumptions in the budget or not budgeting the right amount as opposed to blowing out the budget.
Yep, correct. And I think that's when we get into our workshop tomorrow. There's a risk of that as well for this year because, again, we're trying hard to get the financials as close to break even as possible. In saying that, we still are suffering from some outsourcing of some of the work we're doing, and that is costing us a premium. When we get that pulled right away, again, the cost will come down.
I'm just interested on page 93, the several large projects. And again, I'm no expert, but roading renewals, we've already spent 4.5 million against a budget of 3.5, an annual budget. So we've blown it by $1 million and we've got 6 months to go. So do we stop spending? Because if we keep spending, it gets worse. Yet above it, we've only spent 1.5 of 9.9. So are they the same thing?
I'm sure Susie's going to speak to the extra funding we received, I would imagine.
Yes, so it's very much reflective of the extra funding that we received from Waka Kotahi. They managed to meet Council's allocation for the financial year, so that has covered that. And yes, we are certainly slowing down and pulling back to make sure we don't overspend the total available budget. Our customers and the wear that we see on the network does tend to be focused in that pavement space, so where other savings can be made across other capital activities, it will be directed into those failed pavements as and when it's appropriate.
The urban water reticulation's not you, 3 million spent as at 31st of December against an annual budget of 1.1 million. I mean, these are pretty big numbers. Are we moving these money behind the scenes that we don't know, you know?
Yeah, thank you. A lot of the, I guess, the expenditure relates to the phasing and the various ways the capital projects are based. We've also, of course, relied on maintenance. If you get a major water main blow, you've got to fix it. So you just can't ignore it and say, sorry, you haven't got enough money for that. So there is, yeah. So we're controlling expenditure as best we can, and we, certainly the aim is to meet budget.
I guess I'd like to see, in the reporting, if we have had a major blowout of a drain at 1.1 million, but this doesn't reflect anything. It just says we're overspent. And I'm not CE, but I'd be saying stop spending the money. You've already blown it. So we need some detail around that because where does that 1.5 million come from? What other budget?
Councillor Pitting, I agree. Our reporting on our capital needs to improve, so we will do that. The forecast for our capital right at the moment, the annual plan was 84 million. We're forecasting we're going to be spending 56 million this year, so we will be underspent. That should come through in reduced interest costs, albeit we did get them at the wrong rate. So what we will do is make sure that we give you more detail on what are the projects, what is the spend to date against that project budget, what is the forecast for year end for that particular project, and we'll make sure we do that for the next council meeting.
And my last one is number 8, Museum New Capital. They've spent 9,000 of a budget of 790. What's the 790 for the museum? Because I didn't think we were spending any money with the new one coming on track.
The 790 sounds like the fit-out budget, so I'm assuming the 9 is part of the, so part of it's had to be spent early, part of the early works effectively, isn't it, or design or something along those lines. I'm assuming there's no one from, did you want to?
I'm sorry, I can't answer the museum question, but can I just jump back, to the water one? The $1 million was the replacement of the Opahi pipeline under the river when that blew out, so, yeah.
Cool with that, Andrew, but we don't know that when we see it. We just see we've overspent and we're still spending.
Yeah, fair point, and well, you need more detail.
But also on that note, we know that there's going to be blowout, so how do we incorporate some of that into the budget? Yeah, but that's a problem for another day. We'll pick up Nicole on the museum question, 9,000.
So yes, confirming that amount of money is Philip put that aside and would have been part of his internal fit out for the new part of the museum. So he can't spend that obviously this year because we haven't got the project underway. So he's holding that and looking to carry that forward so that it's still in the pot for next year. So that is a little bit of design money that he spent there, but that's all. Yeah.
So that's part of the 57 million, or is that on top of that for the project?
That is separate to the project.
So
His
really the
internal
project...
fit out is a full, other than the 750, he's fundraising the rest of the money for that internal fit out. So it is quite separate.
Yeah, that 790's always been separate as far as the fit out, and that was the
yeah.
basis of the Museum Development Trust fundraising.
And my last one on that is number 16, parking facilities, budget of $5 million.
Yeah, so there was a provision for the strengthening of the farmers' car park. We estimate the cost a lot lower than that now, and that work will be done in the next financial year, not this one. So it's been reforecast.
It's a lower number?
3 million now.
Brilliant, thanks, Councillor Piddington. Further questions? Councillor Booth?
On page 92, you've got the other financial assets in the current at 75% of 28.9, 21 million. What does that mean?
So when we work out essentially what cash is available, we've estimated that 75% is readily available, another 25% is held up in bonds and things which can't turn to cash easily.
Yep, Councillor Pyatt.
I just kind of have another question along the same lines. So on page 100, we have an overspend in vehicles of 256,000, I think it was. I've just lost my place, sorry. And so I get we have blowouts, we have, OP pipelines and things like that. But how do we as councillors hold the organisation to account? Like, where does that sit? Because surely you just, I don't know, maybe this is timing, it's hard to tell because there's no information in the report, but surely with vehicles, if you've hit your budget, you stop buying them. I'm struggling to understand that.
Yeah, so is that, Mr Dixon.
So, I assure you we have stopped buying the vehicles, but what is not been credited yet is these, the revenue from the sale of our old vehicles. So they're currently going through auction at the moment. So,
Again, Andrew, it'd be handy for a note, 26 vehicles still to be sold.
Yeah.
Because we're going through these and you're giving us heart palpitations, you know what's going on. But the rest of us are really struggling around some of this.
Alrighty, pretty good. That's good, thorough analysis. Sorry, Councillor Scott.
Getting us to the end of the report, 102, page 102, mayor and elected members, unfavourable solicitors' fees of 145K. What did we do?
I'll answer that. For some reason, the demolition costs associated with the Meadows Road properties ended up in solicitors' fees. So they will be, in January, being pulled out of there. And they'll go into the balance sheet awaiting whatever we decide to do with those properties. Yeah.
Thank you. I was thinking, I must have missed a couple of meetings there. And also on 103, Theatre Royal user fees unfavourable 78K. Just remind me, have we got a Theatre Royal active at the moment? No, so what is that?
Unsure what that is.
You're unsure?
Yeah. I don't know why we would have budgeted for user fees for the theatre that was closed.
And there was some secret, like parties going on there and haven't been invited.
Ghost tours.
Okay, nice.
It's obviously historic that needs to be amended. So one more, yes, Councillor Pye, and then Lucky last.
Under the other revenue on page 104, similar question to Councillor Scott. Fishing huts revenue is 52,000 unfavourable. Did we budget the wrong amount, or have we got the timing wrong? Because surely we set the fees, we invoice them, they would appear in the accounts receivable as opposed to, if people haven't actually paid them. So I wonder what's going on there. Have we not sent the bills out for the leases?
The fishing huts, we actually bill from August, September for the year previous. So what we actually wait for the end of the financial year, and then we invoice out. We have got some arrears, but there is a lag in the timing, so definitely.
So once again, our budgeting isn't really aligned with what actually happens in reality?
No.
Some work on some accurate budgeting, but that's all good. Very lucky last. Sorry, did you? Councillor Booth, Councillor Jackson.
Page 113, debtors and other receivables is basically, let's see, 32 million against end of June was 12 million, so 20 million difference. Is that just timing issue? And also on page 114, I thought already spoke to you about this, but the actual cash flow statement is quoting whole of rates, whereas actually should only be half. Those numbers are wrong, or why is that not updated so it's right?
So you also note that the cash and deposits are showing as a negative. We weren't actually in overdraft, but being December and the way that the system works from a bank reconciliation perspective, there was receipts that came in which hadn't been processed at the end of December, hence the debtors high and the cash low. The way the model works in regards to the rates, it's actually looking at the movement in debtors rates, saying basically that we expect that we will get $71 million. It hasn't turned into cash yet, but because it's using the movement rates receivable and the actual revenue, that's why it's showing as a full amount there. So we'll add another column which will have essentially 6 months or 7 months or 8 months.
Who checks these Does someone not go through this line for line and make sure all the numbers are right and according to what's actually supposed to be in the lines before it's presented to council?
Yes, they do.
It's fundamental.
Thanks, Councillor Booth. Now, final question, Councillor Jefferson.
I've got two, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Just page 105, roading and footpaths. Could you just help me understand the personnel costs there under operating expenditure? Sorry, page 105. We're at 124% of budget for personnel costs for year to date. We're only 6 months through the year. Operating expenditure, personnel costs. Sorry?
Yeah, 15764, yeah.
Yes.
So in those costs, we tend to do the capitalisation of staff costs at the end of financial year with the process that we have at the moment. So it all sits in the operational cost before it gets capitalised into the various work activities that the staff have been working on for the capital works.
And the other question I had was just on page 108, the sewer other expenses, utilities 95k, unbudgeted electricity costs. How do you have unbudgeted electricity costs? Why aren't they budgeted for?
Yeah. Basically, if we change the way we draw water, it costs us more energy. So the Opahe, for instance, is pumped completely up to the Claremont treatment plant. But the Pariora is gravity. So we have had a longer period than expected, why we were renewed the Pariora line. So we were drawing on Opahe, which has cost us substantially in power costs.
Brilliant. Good question to finish us off. And you're happy to move that, Councillor Jefferson? Thank you. Councillor Booth, you happy to second that? Thank you. That's really good, and I know a little bit of work to do there, and we'll work on that with you over...
Just
yes,
for you,
Mr.
just for you, Mr Mayor. Look, I thank the councillors for those questions. I think we were able to answer both of them, but it clearly highlights the presentation and the reporting, and our timing issues need to be described so much better. So thanks very much.
Perfect, thank you. Did I put that motion? No. Did I? No. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Brilliant, thanks team, appreciate that. That's review of external governance policy. Welcome back.
I've outstayed my welcome. Thank
no,
you.
You haven't. No. On page 115. Yep, go for it. Thanks.
So the review of this policy follows a council resolution from November of last year, seeking to make an amendment to CCO constitutions and the flow and effect into policy as well. We elected to undertake a full review of the policy. There were a number of changes that appeared to be appropriate at the time, and that was essentially tightening up the policy so that it applied to all external appointments rather than having to define individual appointments with its own set of criteria and parameters. So effectively, this policy does capture that, and it captures feedback from a number of elected members too, who have participated in the external appointments process.
Yep. Perfect, and that was so we had a bit more flex over policy rather than
yes.
Entrenched in the constitution. So I know there has been some involvement from elected members. Is everyone comfortable that that's how we want it to read? All the policy wonks out there. Okay, I'm happy to move that from the chair. Sorry, yep, no, Councillor Scott.
Sorry, I was listening. I'm just questioning on page 125.3, and I'm just talking from my own experience of being as a director on a CCO. It says council appointments to COs that operate as companies are required to become members of the New Zealand Institute of Directors, blah, blah. I just wonder if that is necessary and relevant, because my own experiences on Venture Timaru's, we do not engage or use Institute of Directors. And so I just wondered if the wording, instead of are required, is are encouraged, because I just feel you're putting, not all CCOs will interact with IOD.
Yeah, and I think, so the question is, if we put required, I think there's an obligation to pay for those memberships and those interactions
Yeah,
versus encouraged. You wouldn't necessarily be, I mean, I would encourage it, it's personal development, we want to encourage those directors to have a pathway. I'm happy either way. Is there a feeling in the room that we want to change the wording to encourage? Everyone comfortable with encourage? Yeah.
Through you, Your Worship, absolutely comfortable with that. I guess the point was more about encouraging and enabling ongoing professional development as well. So looking for a mechanism to actually enable that, but absolutely right.
Yeah. Okay, no problem. So I'm happy to move that with the changes. Councillor Scott, you happy to second that? No further discussion. We'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, Mr Abbott. Appreciate all that work. So move now to 9.9, which is local alcohol policy, which I have a conflict in, so I'm going to pass the chair to Deputy Mayor Shannon.
Thank you, Mayor Nigel. I'd like to invite, who's got to come up for this? Brendan, Deb, the whole team. Welcome. I'll hand it over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Shannon. This has been quite a long and windy road to get to this point. There's been a heck of a lot of work by the Joint Committee and supported by officers, but we are here today to present the final product following our consultation. So I'll hand over to Brendan and Deb to speak to the detail and answer any questions.
Thank you, Paul. Deputy Mayor, councillors, good afternoon. As Paul alluded to, the purpose of this report is to present council with a final proposed policy that's been unanimously recommended by the Joint Local Alcohol Policy Committee, seeking council's endorsement of it, or alternatively, council may ask the Joint Committee to go back and seek amendments. I'll make a couple of comments about the report and then also ask or provide an opportunity rather for Councillors Pyle Jackson to speak as well, as they were council's representatives on the committee. The main thing to note is, as Paul said, that this has been a long and thorough process. All of the options available to the three councils through the Local Alcohol Policy and through the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act have been considered. There have been various rounds of community engagement which are detailed in the report, and the Joint Committee, after the consultation process and hearings, are proposing that there are two relatively minor changes to the policy. Each of the three councils is now separately considering this report in their February meetings. So Timaru's the first, and then later this month, Waimea and Mackenzie will be considering it as well. Because of a legislative change last year, the LAP will be finalised if all three councils choose to adopt the policy. Just in terms of those two proposed amendments, this is at point 22 and 23 in the report, page 132. Both relate to discretionary conditions. The first, which was consulted on, was when setting discretionary conditions for special licences, the DLC must have regard to the previous proven responsible history, if any, of the applicant. And that was to, I think it's fair to say, ensure that there's consideration of a degree of proportionality. And the second one, which was identified through the deliberations process, was that the sale of RTD alcohol beverages maybe under 5% be amended to sale of ready-to-drink RTD alcohol beverages to be 5% or other under in alcohol content. And that was, I think, just to reflect the market conditions, I suppose. So ultimately, the two options before council today are to adopt the policy as recommended, or alternatively decline to adopt and seek amendments. Very happy to answer any questions, but I'll just pause for a moment to allow Debbie to make any comments if she wish, and then also, and that's a no. Okay, brilliant. Councillors Pye and or Jackson, if they'd like to make any comments, very happy for them too.
Yeah, so there was a lot of discussion to make not too many changes, which I guess was because the LAT broadly is pretty much fit for purpose anyway. So yeah, just those two amendments, clause 56 and clause 55I, were the only two that, as Brenda mentioned, that we decided to change or upgrade. So yeah, we're only able to implement policies that are inside the Sale of and Supply of Alcohol Act 2012. So I think we did that, and it was a pretty robust sort of discussion, but just those two changes.
I don't have anything further to add. I say that and then I'll add something. I think I actually missed the hearings, family event, but the thing that came through the most was the bottled wine. That was the thing that I recall talking about the most, and the sale of bottled wine at with special licences, which would be remiss of us if we pass this without actually addressing that. But the thing to remember is that always has been and is gosh, sorry, these words have lost me, is a discretionary condition that may be applied. So it is not a standard thing that you can't sell wine by the bottle with special licences. And so that was really threshed out. There were some submissions on it, and my understanding of the committee on the day, because I wasn't there, was that they were happy with that. It is a discretionary condition that can be added. It doesn't have to be.
So the DLC still has the final say at the end of the day, but she can look at previous behaviours and take that into consideration, so that if there's been good behaviour by people who've got special licences, then she can look at that on a one-by-one basis. So I thought that was pretty reasonable.
I probably will just also add, after saying I have nothing to add, is that I would encourage council to adopt this out, because there's been a lot of time and effort gone into it, and I don't think revisiting it is going to achieve a lot.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. But Councillor Burt, you've got something to add? Sorry, Debbie. No. Go for it, Deb.
Just a couple of points to make on that. I think what was during the deliberations, it was uncovered that one of the things was that the application forms for special licences didn't indicate clear enough that people wanted to have the option of bottled wines. It was just accepted, oh, you're not going to get it. So we're looking at reviewing our application form so they can tick the box to say, yes, we'd like to be considered for bottled wines, or sale by bottle. And also the other thing that didn't quite come through is that there is an appeal process, and every application that gets approved, at the bottom it says if you're not happy with the conditions or any of the outcome of the decisions, that you do have an appeal process. So I think that just needs to be made clear.
I'm not sure whether I'm conflicted in that I sit on the licensing panel and I second for the Commissioner, but I mean, these are certain things that are always brought up, particularly the pinch point from many people, including Councillor Booth. I'll say it for you. And so that this indication from this LAT needs to be, well and truly raised with the committee and specifically the Commissioner and what have you, as to what the council and this group specifically, their intent of this is.
Thank you very much. Any more questions, comments? Yeah, Councillor Pye, was that you moving the motion before?
Yeah, I am happy to move the motion. Yeah.
And can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Jackson. Thank you very much. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much, team, and well done on all your good work, and thanks to Councillors Jackson and Pye for your work on this as well.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Shannon. Thanks, team. Go now to 9.10, Timaru District Holdings Limited application for local government funding, agency funding. Welcome. Are you going to come?
I can talk to this.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Trainer.
The Local Government Funding Agency, which is the organisation we borrow from, has now opened up their books to CCOs, and in that the Timaru District Holdings Limited is looking to make application for their facilities. So currently TDHL has two facilities. One is with a commercial bank, a trading bank, and one is with ourselves. The trading bank one will benefit by moving the trading bank facilities to the Local Government Funding Agency. There will be considerable savings in interest. Moving the loan that we provide to Timaru District Holdings Limited will drop the interest rates to the Holdings Limited, because currently we have a margin on that. So currently we are borrowing, the TDC's borrowing that money and then on lending it to the TDHL. So the district TDC will lose a little bit of revenue in that transaction. This is relatively new, and this is only seeking, at this stage, allowing TDHL to apply to borrow the funds. They still have to go through an application process. We don't know the outcome of that. It's probably cleaner to have the loans on the various books. However, not many CCOs have taken up this option at this stage. We know of only about two. So I'll open that for discussion.
Thanks, Mr. Trainer. Questions? Look, I'm comfortable. I know we have talked about this. I think makes good sense. But Councillor Pye.
I'm fully supportive of this, but just will we get another opportunity, like you say, to support whether TDHL borrow that way, or is that their decision? The only reason why I ask is because will that remove borrowing from us and therefore lower our, well, not lower our cap, but give us more headroom between our debt cap and our current borrowing, and just so we understand the implications of that?
At the moment, if our loan was borrowed direct, it wouldn't change our cap, because the cap is against liquid assets. So effectively, the loan to Timaru District Holding in our book at the moment is liquid. So we get our total revenue plus our liquid assets, less our borrowing, so it's neutral to us.
Councillor Piddington.
It seems to make sense, and shame to lose a bit of revenue, but it gives them a bit of freedom, and that's what we want them to do, go out and invest, so I'll move it.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to move that. Thank you, Councillor Piddington. Councillor Booth, did you have a question? You're on the... Yeah.
So the 21.68 million, what are we charging them at the moment? Is it they're basically 5.85? Am I allowed to ask that, or?
You'll know the margin better than me.
So what, is that 5.5? The 90 bank, that bank bill rate is lower than that, isn't it?
I think it's the 90-day bank bill plus 0.35, I think it is. Yeah, 1.35.
Yeah, but yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Cool. Happy to second that, Councillor Booth? Yep. Perfect. Any further discussion? No, all good. I'll put the motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Brilliant. 9.11, and that will be Andrea, and that's investments and borrowing report. I think we'll just take that as read, and has anyone got questions specifically? We'll just go straight to questions. Yeah, you're more than welcome. Yeah.
So earlier, or on Friday, the LGFA had their current quarterly shareholders update, of which earlier today I forwarded through their slides and the online presentation. So you're more than welcome to have a look at that or read through it. So that outlines what LGFA do, where they're at, what they're looking at, which obviously ultimately has an impact on what we do.
Awesome. Any questions for Andrea? No. I'm going to keep this moving and move that if there's no questions. Councillor Parker, happy to second that. I'll look for any questions. No. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Now we are 9.12. Looking very dapper. Welcome, Mr. Burrell. We are talking about the proposed district plan hearing update. And Mr. Cooper, welcome.
Just to clear my conflict of interest, I don't know if I need to move.
No.
If you talk about me, I'll know.
No, that's right. We'll just we'll record that. Thanks, Councillor Scott. Can you just make a note? Thanks. Jess, pass to you, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. We just briefly thought it was time to update the council on who is now appointed to the panel and talk briefly about a bit of a reset that we've had to meet the actual demands of this particular part of the process. So I'll hand over to Hamish, who can give a high-level summary.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Look, I mean, it's a good news item that the hearings are going ahead shortly in May. They start. They're anticipated to go through until the end of 2025. So it is quite a long way to go on the district plan review, which has been going on for a many number of years that everyone here will be familiar with. And we are lucky to have 6 very capable individuals on the panel. They're going to have a lot of work to go through. I guess the key individuals there are in that appendix, the schedule's there as well. It's worth noting that a bit of a causation factor, we are moving from basically a slightly different model, a higher spec model, and that means that there are more individuals and a bespoke policy team to assist in that space. Last year was quite big in terms of government changes as well, and a lot of matters signalled there. And then we got to the end of the year and then everything changed. So it is also worth noting at the end of this item that we're going to have to be aware of some changes coming up and a lot more in the coming months and years ahead. So yeah, that's probably it from me, unless you have questions.
Thanks, team. Thanks for everyone to getting this on track, which is really important. Questions, Councillor Piddington. Thank you.
Looks fine to me, Hamish. I'm just interested to know whether some of the people do people locally get the opportunity, if they're involved in planning, to be part of this, or are they excluded by their geographical address? I just know we've got local planners in Timaru. Yep.
Well, it depends the nature of the query. The panel itself have to be accredited. That's their only sort of proviso. Last year we went through a change in the structure so that we would be able to have more commissioner-centric model. There's the flexibility in that. Just in terms of participation, I mean, I would expect there to be local planners involved in the process, non-panel as well as panel.
Thank you. Any further questions? So recommendation is to note the contents of the report. Can I have a mover for that? Councillor Parker, Councillor Burt. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Brilliant. That was easy, but thank you for all the work on that. Really appreciate that, Tim.